Welcome to another video, my fluff chucking chums. Today we're going to be tying a red holographic dial Bach. The hook for this pattern is a size 12 Fario wet fly hook in black nickel, and the thread will be UTC 70 in flow orange. As usual, we'll start by tying on with a few turns of thread just to secure everything, and just trim away the excess thread there, the waste that you don't need. Next up, we're going to select a feather from the cock cape. This one's just a generic brown cock cape which has a bit of a mottled effect. I quite like the colour, it works well on this pattern. Select a feather that's fairly large to give yourself something to work with. If you don't have a cock cape but you do have a brown hen cape, you can use that as well. It really doesn't make that much difference, to be honest. So pinch about ½ an inch of fibres from the feather and just make sure they're nice and uniform and neat like this. Offer them up to the hook. I like to have them about a quarter of the length of the hook over the back, because when I tie this pattern down, as you see, I will be stopping in line with the point of the hook. Before we take the thread down to the bottom of the hook, we're going to tie in the red holographic tinsel. This is hanked tinsel, it's not on a spool, it lies nice and straight, and I do prefer it for this pattern. If you just hold it alongside the hook and work your way down, taking it in nice touching turns, just till you come in line with the point of the hook. From here we're going to check everything's where we want it to be, which is nice, and then we're going to carefully trim away the excess on the front using the angle of the eye to make sure everything's neat. Now it's time to take the peacock herl. We only need one strand from the pack here because we're going to tie a very sparse dial Bach. It's personal preference. You could use 2 or even 3 pieces of herl if you like. It depends on how bushy you like the flies, but I do like them very sparse. Hold the herl by its thickest end between your finger and thumb and gently run your other hand down the stem, going to the thinnest point until it snaps. This ensures that when you're winding the herl on for the body, it's got less chance of breaking on you in mid-tie, which can be quite frustrating. Catch the herl in on the side of the hook and carefully make your way back up towards the eye with nice touching turns. Be sure to stop around a millimetre before the eye just to give yourself some space, you're going to need that later. Next, very carefully, take your herl and instead of wrapping away from yourself like you normally do, we're going to wrap the herl towards ourselves in nice touching turns. At this point, if you so desire, you could put a touch of super glue onto the body of the fly to keep the herl in place. Continue winding the herl up towards the eye. Don't be too worried about the turns being touching. If the orange thread shows through, it's a bit of a bonus to me. I do like the little orange pop that comes through when the fly's finished. Once you reach that spot just behind the eye, gently keep a hold of the herl and take a couple of turns, and only take 2 turns over the back to secure it. And then I generally pull the herl forward and put a couple of wraps in front, and then that herl can be broken off. Next we're going to take the holographic tinsel. Now winding away from ourselves, put 2 wraps across the base of the tail. This just helps to keep it nice and stable and centered. And then I'm going to go up the fly in 4 open turns, stopping just behind the head. Once you reach the head, carefully take the thread and just trap the tinsel in with a couple of turns behind, and then lift the tinsel back and put a couple of turns in front to secure. After this you can trim away the excess tinsel. Before we move on to the next step, I'd just like to put in 1 single hitch just to keep everything in place, just in case of that dreaded underfurl, which is not what you want at this point. Now we're going to go back to the cockhackle feather and select a 1/4 inch of fibres once more. Again, try and make sure they're fairly uniform, nice and neat, holding them at the thick end. We're going to offer this up, and this will be the throat of the fly. For this tying, I like to invert the fly, turn it upside down and offer the hackle in from the top, using a technique called pulling the fibres gently between finger and thumb and putting a loose wrap of thread across and just under the eye like so, and pulling tight gently. The tips of the throat fibres should just touch the point of the hook as a general rule. So that's from underside of eye to the hook point. That's the length that you're looking for. Once that's secure with a few turns of thread, bring in your scissors and just trim away the excess. Just before we commence with the whip finish, just check the throat hackle sitting nice and central and you're happy with everything. And then a few turns just to make a nice neat little head there. And we're going to whip finish with 4 hitches. Try and keep the pattern as sparse and slim as you can. I find that it is very successful tied this way. Some people do like Diawl Bachs quite bulky. It is a personal preference, but I have found that I have caught a lot more fish with these slim profiled flies. Don't be too worried about proportion. If it's slightly off, I doubt the trout are going to know the difference. It's still a great fly for catching fish. I generally personally tie the pattern from a 12 down to size 16. I find that they are very successful. To finish off, apply a small amount of UV resin with a double needle just to the head. This is the focal point, or the hot spot if you like, for the trout, and it really does help the pattern punch a nice bright colour out when it's in the water. And finally, take your UV torch and set the resin. And there you have it, the red holographic Diawl Bach. Excellent pattern, fished on its own or in a team, along with buzzers or pheasant tail nymphs or any other type of nymph on the cast. Brilliant fly, all year rounder, catches a lot of fish. Get some tied up and fill those boxes. Thank you very much for watching and take good care of yourselves.